In this video, I want to discuss Chapter 11 of Ibn Husserl's Prolegomena to Pure Logic, which is an intro to his logical investigations. I've done Chapters 1 and 2, but I've left out 3 through 10 because that's the big argument, many arguments and many multifaceted arguments that, that one could probably talk about for a while, and I'm not going to really discuss those in depth as I am these few chapters that I am of the Prolegomena. I have a video which is called Husserl's Anti-Psychologism, where I go over that in about 15 minutes, which is goes over Husserl's arguments against that kind of philosophy, the kind of philosophy that explains things that explains things psychologically. And in this chapter, the idea of pure logic, and I have the shorter logical investigations, which is like it's a abridgment of the logical investigations, and I have that on my Kindle. And basically, what I do is before I do a video, I will reread things, and I will take notes on what I want to discuss. I have two more videos prior to this on chapters of the Prolegomena. And what this is going on here is it's not inherently phenomenological yet. It's not talking about phenomenological concepts, but it has phenomenological viewpoints. He does have a little bit about intentionality in there. He has a little bit about phenomenological reality and ideality in there. But it's these chapters there is in here on epistemology. There's a philosophy of science, and also a bit of a metaphysics. The Prolegomena and the logical investigations themselves relate very much so, I think, to what Husserl's later work, Experience and Judgment. And I have a video which is about a half hour on that. If you want to know a little bit more about that, then I'd go over. I read the whole book in January, and I discussed various different sections of that book in that video. In section 62, which is in chapter 11, he talks about the unity of science. This whole thing is about what are the tasks of pure logic. Now, logic, for him, is talking about it's a normative discipline. In chapters 1 and 2, he discusses a lot about how logic is practical and is normative, and that's because logic is the various relations of the world, the relations of these states of affairs, the laws of nature, those things that we think of, the things that we think of as metaphysical, are logical relations. We understand predicate logic, like we have the two-place and three-place predicates, the translating English to predicate logic, that's just, and the reason all those metaphysical relations are logical, because predicate logic kind of shows that. And I guess if you understand predicate logic, then you can understand why relations and facts and states of affairs, those are all logical relations. And basically the whole thing about this logic is logic confines the content, and allows us to build up via theory and unity in science to, according to Husserl, to move up towards more knowing and more knowledge. The unity of science. Science is unity in acts of thought, dispositions of thought, etc. It's thought, it's about thought, and this is about knowledge. So that's why it is a philosophy of science, and it is a epistemology as well. And he asks the question, what makes science science? And he says, no, it's not psychology. It's not. It has nothing to do with that. There's more reality than that, as he's explained in chapters 3 through 10. And he says there's an anthropological goal. There's an objective or ideal, both, really, interconnection of everything. And that's a big thing how this relates to experience and judgment, because in that book, he discusses various different logical relations and shows how everything is interconnected, how everything is together in various different ways, and he discusses all of that. And he talks about how given experience, there's logic there. There's logic in what we experience, and we employ logic when we experience things. That's like a basic, very low thesis, like a very vague way of talking about the thesis of that book. There's an a priori objective interconnection of everything via logical relations, and that gives unity in thought because of that. Everything is interconnected via logical relations. Those 1, 2 place, 3 place, and even larger predicates that relate everything together. Thinking about the ball is red, that is a relation. Saying that 3 is greater than 2, that's a relation. Everything is interconnected via these logical relations. That's the thesis. That's a big thing that he says in this book, as well as in Experience and Judgment. It's an interconnection of truths, and we're moving up towards gaining more truths and more acts of knowing and more knowledge. And he's talking about this objective reality that isn't like a realist standpoint, but it's from in this case it's a phenomenological way of talking about objectivity, and he doesn't talk about it in a really strict phenomenological way here, but it is inherently phenomenological. And the things to which thought is intentionally directed towards things. This is intentionality. That's the thesis of Husserl's phenomenological works. It says that consciousness is consciousness of something, and it's intentionally directed towards things. And we have gnosis, noma, and highlight. And nothing in the world can be without being. Nothing can be without being. There's always, in the phenomenological sense, again, there's an objective reality. Objectivity, basically here, of an object of knowledge, is saying that what is real is what is ideal, and that is inherently phenomenological. He's not giving phenomenological thesis here. He's not giving phenomenological elucidations or theory, but this is phenomenological, saying that what is real is ideal. And that's basically to sit on the phenomenological fence between realism and idealism, but it really isn't a fence. It's much more than that, I think. And though what is real is what is ideal, that's the truth. Though that is the case, that doesn't mean that there's no objective interconnection, or there's truths to be had, or truths to be found out, or more acts of knowing to occur. That isn't to say that there's more, that there is no more unity of thought to be had. Knowledge is unity in objectivity. To know something, is to understand it as ground, is one thing he says. And that's almost Heideggerian, though. Like Heidegger says, I know about a hammer because I know how to use it, and I know what it does, and I know everything about it. To know something, to know a fact, to know things, is unity in objectivity for that very reason. Beings of truth, actually realized, that's unity in truth. And again, that's, with the what is real is ideal thing, that that really awesome applique that he hasn't really given yet, because this is very early work in his phenomenological writings. There is this ideal abstraction that that as an ideal correlate of transient subjective active knowing, and there is the unity of the scientific field, and what that does, science for Husserl is logic, of course, as a normative discipline, and having a theory at your disposal, using that and basic laws of nature, and moving on with that theory and those basic laws of nature towards more knowledge. Putting truths together and finding more about the objective, actually ideal and objective world. In section 63, there's the unity of things. What constitutes the unity of science? Scientific knowledge is grounded knowledge. To know understanding, to know the ground of something, is to know the necessity of its being. That's also kind of, to understand something ready to hand, to understand a hammer, is to know how to use it, is to understand the necessity of its being, what it is essentially, or what it is in reality. States of affairs are laws of nature, and that's to see its truth, and that's one thing. That's one way that we move towards getting more knowledge. Is we have a theory at our disposal, and we have logic at our disposal as a normative thing that confines content, and we hit upon those basic laws. We understand them, and we see what more truths we can put together based upon the basic laws, the laws of nature that we do have. Basic laws are general truths that are not further provable. So it's just like, you can give some kind of, I guess you can try to give a proof of why 2 plus 1 equals 3, but it's a basic law because you can keep trying to prove it, but you'll hit on the same info. And this is a big reason why he is a foundationalist. He's a foundationalist when it comes to epistemology. There are basic laws, and thus there are basic beliefs that we can't further justify or we can't further prove. And that's the foundational, whether we're talking about basic or foundational laws of nature, or basic or foundational beliefs, we're still talking about things that don't need justification or proof beyond what they are themselves. To deductively prove general and individual truths, that's the unity of scientific theory. That's what is done. And that's that's somewhat of what a theory is to be systematically complete. The unity of scientific thought. In section 65, the possibility of science or a theory. Now this is important because we're talking about how a theory. A theory is basically a take as to how we're going to move up towards more knowledge. The psychological theory of behaviorism. So it's a bad example because Husserl doesn't really like the psychological lenses. But behaviorism is to say that we can infer things about the brain based upon the behavior of the person or what the person is like. We can infer paranoid schizophrenia based upon him saying that he sees things that no one else sees, and being afraid or being paranoid about things that no one else sees. It's inferring things. Behaviorism is inferring things, deductively, based upon what we know empirically, and making emphasis to what we don't really have full knowledge of, but it's kind of a different theory. I guess I could talk about behaviorism for a while though, and that's really not it really isn't a good way of talking about it as I have, because it's so much more than that. The conditions. He questions what are the conditions of the possibility of science or a theory. A theory is basically a take on how we move up towards more knowledge, how we build upon the basic laws that we do have. Theoretical knowledge rising to higher levels of knowledge. What are the ideal conditions for knowledge? We have the noetic conditions, which are the a priori ones, which are not grounded empirically. We have the logical conditions, which are grounded by content of knowledge. And this is all about how are we going to move towards higher levels of knowledge. That's another way in which logic is a normative discipline. And this is when he says that logic confines content. And I, in the logic class I took the semester, he's, my professor, he says that everybody else at this university deals with content. The biology, the chemistry, the physics, the other kinds of philosophy, the anthropology, etc. They all deal with content, and it's like he says, well, it's like they bring me all the food and I chop it up and I put it in the pan. He does logic among other things. But he says that he is the chef of the university because he takes all their food, chops it up and puts it in a pan and makes something awesome. And that's the essence of saying that logic confines content, and that relates to how Husserl says that logic is a normative discipline. Relations of logic, the way we understand things, helps us confine content and move up towards, and see how they relate to our basic laws, and move up via a certain theory towards higher levels of knowledge, more knowings, more acts of knowing. In section 66, there's a question of the content of knowledge. There's deductive proofs and there's knowledge. There's, how do we move towards finding more laws? The way we find more laws is we test upon them. We have hypotheses and we keep testing on them. And if we keep landing upon this one fact, that's how theories become laws. The law of gravity is that from Newton, no matter how much I drop something, it's always going to fall, and there's various that's how science works. And the laws make or break a theory, basically. The laws constitute the possibility of a theory. The theory of behaviorism. There's various different theories of philosophy. Of science. Behaviorism is not all of psychology. That's a part of it. It's a part of psychology. It's a part of psychology. It's a theory of it. And the laws, according with a certain theory, makes or breaks it. And laws are theories are just, according to Husserl, they're just different ways of moving up towards knowledge. And laws, the laws that have been established, that they regulate as to whether a theory is possible or not. So that is it's this question of what constitutes the essence of a theory. And in section 67, he asks, what are the tasks of pure logic? It's about fixing the categories of meaning. And why this is logical, I'll get to in a second. The one is that we lay down more important concepts. primitive concepts which allow interconnected webs of knowledge. 2, clarify concepts scientifically, and 3, clarify objective concepts. We're concerned with the phenomenological origin of concepts, and having our concepts confused and not having things clarified hinders the process of gaining knowledge. That's the reason that analytic philosophy is so big, because it's analytic philosophy, from Frege and Russell and Wittgenstein onward toward what it is today, that comes from the quest of clarifying things, tossing out things that are meaningless, and these pseudo statements, according to Rudolf Carnap, tossing out things that are meaningless and clarifying things that are meaningful. The reason analytic philosophy is about clarifying concepts and moving up towards higher levels of knowledge, basically. But analytic philosophy in ethics, metaphysics, philosophy of language, epistemology, philosophy of science, etc. It's about making our concepts clear, being clear in what we say. As in, it's going against people like Hegel and Heidegger, because Heidegger in his essay "What is Metaphysics?" he says the nothing nothings, and Carnap bashes on him and says, "Well, what does this mean? Nothing. It doesn't have it. It's meaningless." The task of pure logic is to find objective validity of formal structures of laws, and this has to do with meaning, because logic is the business of logic is twofold. It's syntax and it's semantics. When you do truth tables in sentential logic, when you do the interpretations in predicate logic, that's semantics. It's about truth. It's about meaning and truth. Syntax, when you do derivations, proofs in sentential logic and predicate logic, trying to get from a couple different logical sentences and get to a total another via only a certain amount of rules in a logical system. That's syntax, and that it's how things work together. That's we can't if we have a wedge, if we have a disjunction and we want to eliminate it, there's a way to do it. And that's another reason why logic for Husserl is normative, because it's about finding meaning. There's syntax in all this, but for Husserl, it's about meaning. It's about clarifying things and moving up towards more knowledge via a certain theory. If you think I've left something out, or if you think if you think I've said something wrong or discussed something wrong, comment on the side here. I'd love to discuss it with you. Also, if you have any questions, also comment below. I'd love to discuss with anyone who wants to.